Good Wednesday evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room then and now. Last day of July, getting closer and closer to opening day. Greg Chris, along with Frank Fear, welcome you to the show. Frank, great to see you again, and I think we got another good one lined up tonight.
Boy, do we ever. This is, you and I always talk about the fact, almost every week we say, oh, can't wait for this show, can't wait for that show, and with good reason, because we both love history, we both love WVU, and the end of July, and guess what happens tomorrow?
Yeah.
We start practice and watched Coach Brown's presser today, very impressive as usual. We got we'll talk, not this week, but soon about the depth chart as we get closer to the big Penn State game on August 31st. We're so pleased tonight to have he did, Kevin White, what a tremendous job in 84. Basically came off the bench really after he was backing up Jeff Hostetler. Did a wonderful job in 84, and we'll talk about wonderful memories from a great team, and we're so pleased he's taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, I think back, and of course I've always been a huge fan, but back then I was going to all the games watching, and I always felt like he was such a good quarterback, but never got a lot of the accolades. Of course, again, he wasn't a showboater or a showman or anything like that. He just went out and got the job done. And that 84 season was really, had it not been for some key injuries along the way, a phenomenal season. Great team, and he just did a fantastic job running that team. And I think we've both heard Coach Nealon speak highly about him. And but again, Frank, one of the things I always tell you is that throughout all this process of doing these shows, my show and this show, and getting to know some of these guys, one of the things that always strikes me, same thing for tomorrow night, is what they accomplished after they wrapped up their playing careers. This guy is no exception. What a great career he has had off the football field, and it's always so impressive to talk to these folks and see, the great accomplishments they made while they were Mountaineers on the field, and then the things that they've done in their lives to help other folks has just been amazing. And this guy is no different from that.
Yeah, absolutely. After he left WVU, he's from Arizona, went to ASU, got his law degree, just retired as a long-term Superior Court judge. And I'll tell you, he's listening to this. A fellow reached out last night to me by the name of Denny Brown. I think Kevin knows Denny.
I know him,
the defensive coordinator. And he said, wow, what a guy. He just did everything that we asked him to do, and he did it really well. And the results speak for themselves. So we're really pleased he's here.
Yeah, and another fun thing about this is I went back just kind of watch again just to get my memory right. Watched a lot of the games from that 84 season, and I'm telling you, those are some of the most exciting, phenomenal games in the history of WVU, I think. And the Boston College game backed up right by the Penn State game right after that. I mean, man, it was something else to watch and so much fun. We're looking forward to having him, and we'll get him on here in just a second whenever you want to bring him in. We do want to mention to everyone to make sure they like and subscribe on YouTube or however they try to watch it. They don't think it costs them anything to do that, but
that's right.
Sure, they wouldn't want to pay for this. That's for daggone sure. But they might want to pay to see Kevin White. They probably don't want to pay to see us. And as you scroll across the screen, we also like to mention Mark Parsons and Mike Dunlap every week, because those guys are so instrumental in helping us get guests and helping us stay afloat here with the show. And they have just done a fantastic job lining up great guests for us. So we appreciate Mike and Mark for helping us out there.
So let's bring Kevin on.
And there he is. Hello, Kevin.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing great. Great to see you. You look, you should look as old as me, but you don't. I don't know what's going on here. And I wanted to say too, when we were talking about the judgeship, I served as a magistrate judge for a year.
Oh my.
And I thought, how could somebody do that for 30 years? I can't even imagine that. But kudos to you. Hats off. Thank you for being here. This is so exciting for us, for me, and for Frank, I know. And like I said, I got to go back and watch some of those games from back in your in your days, and man alive, what an exciting time it was in my mind for Mountaineer football. And the big question, Franklin, you and I talked about this before we came on the air. You're from Arizona, and you said it was a good story. How did you end up as a Mountaineer? Let's hear that story.
Oh my! I'll probably tell you the longer version here. It's pretty good.
That's right.
So I played at Casa Grande Union High School, and I love the Mountaineers, but I got to tell you, my first love is always the Casa Grande Cougars. The Casa Grande Cougars were not a very successful football program, one of the lower tier programs for years in Arizona. And I had a coach who came in my junior year by the name of John Kashner. Came from Pennsylvania, and he is an amazing coach. He's an amazing person. And we went through our season. My senior year, we did not score in the first 4 games, and the cheerleaders, one of which was my girlfriend, cheered 2, 4, 6, 8, score before you graduate. And I had such high hopes, and the season was just a disaster, and I was a disaster with it. And there were flashes there, showed some skills and some talents. And my high school coach on his Christmas break went from college to college, and he is a guy who can make connections, and he knew many coaches, and one of those coaches was Bill Kurlavich.
Yeah.
And he went to Bill Kurlavich on his Christmas break. I'm sure they did some other things too, but he made the pitch for me, and West Virginia looked at the film, that they liked it, but they had other folks rated ahead of me. And so signing day came and went, and the folks ahead of me didn't sign for West Virginia. And so the back door opened, and I got a telephone call suddenly from West Virginia saying they love me and want me to come out. So I jumped on a plane, first plane ride in my life, and flew to West Virginia, never been east of the Mississippi, and came out for my recruiting visit here. And I really thought, what the heck are these guys doing? Didn't they see my game film and how poorly the team did and my lousy statistics? And I worked out on the field with Gary Tranquil, the then quarterback coach, who was a fantastic coach.
Oh, wow.
And I thought he was not impressed, but I guess he thought enough of me to give the green light to Coach Nealon to make an offer to me. And the only other offer I had from a school that gave scholarships was Villanova. And but I saw that schedule, and I really wanted to play against the big schools that West Virginia played against. And my high school coach advocated strongly for West Virginia, so I jumped on board. A totally unexpected choice, and it was a fantastic choice. It just paid so many dividends for me over the years. It's just amazing, just an incredible fluke of fate that I ended up at West Virginia University.
That's awesome. Good thing they didn't hear the cheerleaders cheer. That might change the mouth.
Yeah. We didn't have sound on those games.
So you, as we know, you were kind of squeezed in between 2 pretty good quarterbacks. So, I've often felt, because I watched you, and I've often felt that you didn't get the accolades so much later on because you were squeezed in between these 2 other guys. I always felt like that you were underrated, and going back and watching the games just proves that point. How did it, you were kind of stuck in the middle right there, but you hung in there and persevered, which I know a lot of people appreciated. How did all that play out with you? I know it was, it couldn't have been a great situation, but I'm sure it wasn't awful either. So,
well, I'll tell you, my development as a quarterback, obviously the coaches had a lot to do with that. But when I came in, Oliver Luck was the starting quarterback, and I learned so much from watching him. I'd always been the starting quarterback in every team I played for, and nobody really to model. And I learned so much watching from him, and he's not just a great football player, he's an amazing human being. One of the most amazing people I've met, probably, and amazing football player. And then this other guy
Yeah, and both of them, of course, as everybody knows or should know, they both played in the NFL, had nice careers, and of course, Hostetler won the Super Bowl as a quarterback. So yeah, two pretty good fellows there to be in between. But like I said, I always felt like maybe you were overlooked a little bit in the looking beyond those years for what you accomplished. And two of the biggest accomplishments, I think, from a fan's perspective, I don't know from yours or not, but was the defeat of Boston College. And then the very next week, Penn State, after 50 some odd years in back-to-back games, phenomenal. And so I want to kind of get you to, and there are probably other games that you'd like to talk about too, and you talk about as much as you want to, but those two games in particular, I think, stick out with fans.
Oh my, yeah. That senior season after being the backup to Jeff Hostetler, to Oliver Luck and Jeff Hostetler both, I was holding out for my senior year. And I don't know if you recall this, but I didn't start the first game and came in the second game and took over starting at that point. But it went on this storybook tale of a 5'11" and a half kid from Arizona with maybe average talent, getting to play against these great teams, Doug Flutie and Boston College at that time. Obviously, Doug Flutie's season that year was historic, and I'd had the privilege to watch him play for 4 years, and to be able to play them. And I should add, what made it even more of a storybook was that was the first game my parents ever came to at West Virginia, and my aunt and uncle came, and my brother came, and as the first half was a little rocky. And the second half, things started to click, and we came back from a big deficit on an ABC, I believe, national TV audience.
Yep.
And one of the most exciting games, I think, in WVU history. The fans stormed the field, and it was just, like a storybook. And lo and behold, we turned around the next week and played Penn State. Hadn't beaten them in 29 years. And Mom and Dad sure wanted to stick around, and they did. And so we played Penn State with that 29-year history hanging over our head. And it was a tough, hard-fought game. And at the very end, Penn State was driving, and Doug Strang, the Penn State quarterback, threw an interception. Larry Hawley picked it off.
Yep.
And the ball turned over, and the game was ours. We just had to run the clock out. But doggone it, I went out on the field, and I was really looking forward to seeing that clock tick off. But the fans rushed the field, and it was bedlam. It was chaos on the field, and the referees were trying to get them off. I was yelling at them. I wanted them off because I wanted that clock to tick down. I wanted to take that last snap and that jump up in the air. And then I got a tap on my backside. Look at the replay of the game. You'll see Joe Paterno come up, tap me on the backside.
Sure did.
And he said, good game, Kevin. We're calling it. You guys have waited long enough, something to that effect. Yeah. And on his way. And so, here's this guy who sat on the bench for 3 years and didn't start at the beginning of his senior year. Great disappointment. And I find myself in the middle of the season, back-to-back, just historic wins. It was just really, really incredible experience.
Well, Kevin, if you write your autobiography, the title should be "I Sat on the Bench Twice," because you came off the bench as a football player, and you sat on the bench
Right.
as a Superior Court judge. The thing that we've got the information on the '84 season for those who aren't familiar, and obviously the Penn State and Boston College. And some people think the Boston College win is the biggest win in the history of WVU because Doug Flutie was the quarterback and he went on to win the Heisman that year. But you beat TCU in a bowl game. But that last line there where it says finished 8-4, what I hadn't realized until Greg and I went back and looked at the history is that you were 8-4, but you lost 3 games by 9 points, and 2 of those games were on last-second field goals. In fact, against Temple, it was the last play of the game. And against Frank Reich and Maryland, it was with 20 seconds left. That team, with exception of being beat, the only team you're really beaten by was Virginia. And I think Virginia went on to win the ACC that year. Maryland came in second. But it's just an incredible situation. That team really has to go down as one of the best teams in Mountaineer football history.
You know, I mean, the record was 8-4, but I will tell you, Sport Magazine ranked the most difficult schedules for college football teams that year. I think we were 7th in the whole country, and rightly so. And, you know, we had the losing streak at the end of the season, but as you mentioned, the University of Virginia team was a darn good team. They were 8-4. Their quarterback was Don Majkowski, who had a moment of glory in the NFL for the Packers, and they had some other really good players. And even Rutgers was, I think, 7-3 that year and had a really solid team. And Temple was coached by Bruce Arians and had Paul Palmer at their running back position, who would end up being finalists for the Heisman Trophy. So those were 3 really good teams, probably the best team Rutgers had in years, probably the best team Temple had in years. And so it was a tough schedule, and we had lots of injuries, and, as you would expect in playing that kind of schedule.
Yeah, that was one of the things I remembered was the injuries. And I always said once, you know, at the end of the season, then by the time the bowl game come around, you'd healed up pretty well and went into the Bluebonnet Bowl and just in my mind dominated TCU, I think, which was probably favored, or at least it was a toss-up, and pretty much dominated those guys in that game. And I think it just showed how good a team you guys were, albeit the injuries and everything at the end.
Yep. We hate to do this because we're going to miss some names. But if you just look at the guys on that team, and again, you miss names, but Gary Mullen, a name that basically stays in history. Willie Drury, you're going to see film of him in a few seconds. What a wide receiver he was, 2,400 career yards. And I mean, talk about being blessed with special teams guys.
Yes,
Paul Woodside, my God. And Steve Suprick was at 11,000 career punting yards. John Holyfield was hurt, if I recall. It didn't play in either the Penn State or Boston College game. But Pat Randolph, I mean, just like this year, what a stable of running backs. Pat Randolph, Tom Gray, Ron Wolfley, John Gay. I mean, Brian Josiak reached out the other day and said he really enjoyed blocking for you guys because the skill players were so good. And then you had great linemen too. I mean, there's Brian's name. Just a great group. You want to comment on any of those guys?
Oh boy, the whole bunch of them. Gary Mullen, tough as nails, crafty receiver, played it very, very smart. Willie Drury, lightning speed, also tough as nails. Paul Woodside, ice in his veins and quirky as can be, and everybody loved him for it. Steve Suprick was an underrated, very, very accomplished punter that kept us in good field position, which back in that day and age of football was essential. And then our running back stable, John Hollifield, a beautiful, graceful running back. Pat Randolph, kind of a mixture of talents. Tommy Gray, rest in peace. Tommy was a good receiver, good running back, good all around. Ron Wolfley, my Arizona buddy here, Ron followed me out to Arizona with the Cardinals and is a radio and TV legend out here now, voice of the Cardinals. But he was as tough as they come and had a nice career in the NFL. And then John Gay, may he rest in peace as well, was a tough running back who made a critical run against Boston College that let us win that game.
Yeah, and then I was going to say, then on defense, you got, again, we'll miss names here, but Freddie's going to be on your show Thursday night, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yep,
Right.
he'll be here. He'll be with me tomorrow night. Yeah, had him on once before. He was great, so I couldn't wait. I contacted him.
His game against Boston College should go down as one of the greatest defensive performances in West Virginia.
Oh my goodness, yes, yep. I told him when I texted him, I said I was sitting here watching film, and I was watching Kevin White because he's going to be on our show next week. But I noticed this other guy kept turning up every play on defense. I said, I'd like to get him on my show too if you want to be on. He's like, yes, that's all he said back to me. Yes, because he's been on before. He's great.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me about these defensive players, and again, apologies to anyone we missed, is that how much the freshmen contributed. I mean, when you watch the films, David Grant, Brad Hunt, Stacy Smith, and then there's a guy I don't recall, Rich Rod something or other. Who's he?
He's my old roommate. He followed me to Arizona for a while too.
That's right. That's right. Everybody's coming. What a group! Yeah, what a team.
Listen to this crazy fact. So here I am in Arizona, halfway across the country, and I got Ron Wolfley, who lives about 45 minutes north of me. I got Rich Rodriguez, who lives about 50 minutes south of me. Strange twist of fate.
Yeah, see, this is another chapter for your book. I came to them, then they came to me. That's a chapter for your book. It's an amazing thing. Why don't we while we're at it, why don't we show some of this film? We'll start with the Boston College game. Were both of those games on national TV, guys? I can't remember.
Frank Broyles and Keith
Jackson.
Keith Jackson called the Boston College game, and then ESPN. I believe that was ESPN's highest rated game up to that point.
Amazing. And that I wanted to mention too before we go to the film that someone asked me the other day why the scoreboard had finally at the end of the Penn State game. I said in the previous 28 games it was 0, 20, 27 and 1, and the one tie was 1958. Yeah. So that was the right thing. But here's the BC game coming up, and we put in the names of players. There you are, and then boy, was he a great runner.
Yep.
Yeah, boy, look at that.
There's Fred Smalls.
Freddie.
He's coming back too. You'll see him again.
Mike Scott.
Yep.
There's Willie.
Wayne Brown makes a beautiful catch.
Great defense.
Oh, unbelievable defense.
A lot of blitzing in the second half in particular. There you go. Great play here. Look at this.
Look at this.
Beautiful.
Willie Drury saving me there with a great catch.
And there's Ron.
Ronnie Wolfley pounded. That's fourth down, I'll point out too.
Yep.
Yeah, and people should remember that WVU was down 20-6 and came back and won the game. This is the winning drive. He's nervous.
Here's that run I was talking about for John.
Yeah. Hill. And there it is right here. What a run. And look at this. Wow. There's Smalls.
He gets his dance in there at the end. I watched on the game.
Well, I'll tell you a funny thing. You see that crowd?
Yeah.
I have to admit that I became a big fan of Doug Flutie. I mean, I thought I was a small quarterback, but he was the only guy that was smaller than me. And I think he started, we were the same class. So I think the first game time he got was against us. And I was like, who the heck are they putting out? They're putting number 22. They've got a defensive back playing quarterback. And anyway, at that scene you just had where they were crushing around, Doug Flutie came up to me to try and say congratulations. And the crowd pressed in and our helmets became interlocked. The face mask became interlocked for an uncomfortable period of time. And it got quite awkward there for a while.
Oh, wow.
See some memes of that. That'd be,
Yeah.
here's
Here's the Penn State game, and it is ESPN. Yeah, it is ESPN.
Yeah.
And this is the week immediately after the two most incredible home games with big wins in WVU history, Mountaineer history.
Dave Preston, tough as nails, was
Yeah.
right there.
There's Ron again.
There's Ronnie.
Oh, this is what a great player DJ's Dozier was.
We took a little risk there. We blitzed and they got us.
Great field goal, 49 yards. That's it right there.
Always laughed at Brad Hunt for pointing the wrong way. He got excited.
What a run
Yes,
by Pat Rundolph. Look at this.
Yeah.
great block too. Yeah, great block here. I don't know who that was, but
There it is.
There it is.
Wow.
I'm gonna bring up. I just gotta ask this. I know you had one serious blunder in the game against Penn State. It was an out pass down to the sideline, and it was picked off. And I just fell over in my chair. I was like, "No!" I said, "I can't imagine what you must have felt when that happened." Because I'm sure as soon as you let it go, you're like, "Oh no!"
When you're a lawyer, you know how to spin that. And what I always tell people is I made the game-saving tackle.
There you go. Yeah, chased him down.
Yeah.
The funny story, I had a professor, and I needed a recommendation letter for law school. And he wrote the letter and he put that in there. He'd always remember when Kevin made the game-saving tackle against Penn State.
Yeah.
He left out the part that I threw that out a little bit late.
Well, look, guys, who commented here? It's your backfield buddy.
Yep, there you go. Pat
Oh,
Randolph.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, Pat Randolph.
Awesome running back.
Patrick, great memories on our end. What an
Yes,
athlete! What a great guy.
Yeah. For sure.
And we've always talked to as I've gotten to know a lot of these folks that played through these shows. Frank and I have talked extensively about the accomplishments after your Mountaineer careers wound up, and you you're one of the outstanding ones there as far as that is concerned. Tell us a little bit about, after your career ended, you head back out to law school in Arizona, and give us a little walkthrough of what happened since then.
So went to law school at Arizona State, came out, went to work for the Maricopa County Public Defender Office, which at that time was just a really rich environment to learn from some really good people who went on to be very good judges and prosecutors. And then from there, came back to my hometown, Casa Grande, to work in a law firm here for a while. And then I got appointed to the bench as a judge. And after that, you had to stand to election. I went through election 3 or 4 times to remain on the bench. It's Superior Court's the general jurisdiction court in Arizona. We handle all the criminal, traffic accident, lawsuit type stuff, divorces. So did that for 20 years as a trial court judge, and thoroughly enjoyed that experience. Very, very rich experience there. Never a dull day.
I guarantee you that. I got to ask you this too. You said Maricopa County. Did you ever work with that sheriff guy out there? I can't remember his name, but he was always on TV there for a while.
You know,
Yeah.
indirectly, he wouldn't bring my darn inmates down. That was the only interaction.
Probably had him out in a rock pile somewhere and couldn't find him.
Yeah, maybe. We wanted to get him down to Pinal County. It was hard to get him down there.
Yeah, you see him on TV a lot of times. I think he's pretty tough.
He's running for something right now. He's got an election yesterday.
Wow. Wow. So that had to be a really a satisfying time in your life doing the judgeship. I'm sure that's a very important job.
You want to do something that's important and something that has meaning, and a judge certainly brings that. I mean,
yeah.
It is a really meaningful job.
Guarantee you.
Along those lines, Kevin, and I'm glad Greg asked the question the way he did. We sometimes think of these, what we do after athletics as being different from athletics. But I would imagine, certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, that there are a lot of things you probably learned as an athlete that served you on the bench and in your law career. Could you talk about that a bit?
No, I will say without any hesitation, I say it often, the greatest education I received was through participating in the West Virginia University football program with the professor emeritus, Don Nealon, and all of the other excellent professors on that coaching staff. It was a high pressure environment and a very demanding environment, but they taught me how to win and how to prepare to complete a big task. And the lessons I learned from that process were just invaluable. And over and over and over, I could see that I attributed my success vis-a-vis persons who might have been, the opponent in the case or whatever, to the fact that I understood preparation, I understood hard work, I understood discipline, all of those things that are essential to be successful on the football field translate perfectly over to real life. And anyone who tries to demean college sports or suggest that they don't, that they're overvalued, I strongly disagree.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of your coaches. A lot of our listeners always like to hear former players' thoughts on Coach Nealon. So I'll give you a minute to talk about him.
Coach Nealon, never met anybody like him. I'm 61 years old, and I can still say I never met anybody like him. But he knew how to win, and he had the big picture, and he could implement all the little things that needed to happen in that big picture to bring about success. West Virginia made tremendous strides under his time there. I mean, he's really one of the most successful coaches in many respects in college football history to have taken that program and elevated it like he did, where he took 2 undefeated teams into what could have been national championship games, and to do it year after year consistently. That's amazing. You just don't see that anymore. You probably aren't going to see it anytime soon. But he was very good to me. I remember when I was a freshman, a kid from Arizona who'd never seen snow, and we were getting ready to go to Syracuse or someplace awful cold, and he became concerned about me and went through his closet and found me a nice leather coat, get ready for the winter. And the guy has 1,000,000,001 things to worry about, and here he is thinking about getting a coat for his second team quarterback.
Wow.
So,
no. Yes, a small gesture, but big in the eyes of most people looking in from the outside. That's pretty cool. You now that you're retired, I'm sure you have plenty of time to check in on the Mountaineers and see what's going on in Morgantown. So, how closely do you follow the Mountaineers? And if you do follow them closely, then talk a little bit about what you're seeing coming up here in the next season, because we've got Penn State coming up here before long.
Yeah.
I'm coming out for that game, by the way.
Awesome.
A teammate's daughter is getting married, and They are Mountaineers through and through, so they had the wedding on Friday, so they could all make it to the game on
Good
Saturday.
deal.
And by golly, I'm going to go to the wedding and the game. But no, really a treat when West Virginia makes it out here to a bowl game. Great to get out and see them and root with them and get with the Mountaineer fans and remember what that's like. And I know that they've made great strides last year, and I really had faith in this coach. I just hear great things from football people about him. This is a tough environment to be successful. Very, very tough environment. I think schools are experiencing challenges that nobody's ever experienced in college football before. And while it hasn't been, all wins and good things, I think the trend is clearly in the right direction. I just believe in Coach Brown and where he's going. And I like this quarterback. Quarterback. Yeah. He might even be shorter than me.
I was going to say he's not quite as big as you were.
I saw him at the bowl game, and I thought, doggone, look at that guy after my own heart. He might be shorter than me, but a little more athletic, and I think that arm is livelier too.
I don't know about that. You just didn't get to show off that athleticism like he does. They had too many running backs you just hand the ball to rather than having you run it all the time.
It was a different game.
It was a different time. That's for sure. Yeah, always when I watch those games, I always smile a little bit when I see they'll say, well, they're not in the eye this time, or they're not in the whatever they call the pro set or whatever it is. You don't see two running backs in the backfield very often anymore, and two tight ends and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was definitely a different time. That's for sure. One of the things that, you mentioned Coach Brown, what you like there, Frank and I again have talked about this time and time again over the years. One of the things that you rarely, if ever, hear about WVU, including this time frame right now, is that, there's some sort of scandal or there's some sort of cheating or they got caught doing this and doing that. And it doesn't happen at WVU. And I think that's a testament to Coach Brown and all the coaches prior to him, Coach Neal, of course, in the same boat. So looking at what kind of person he is and what his goals are and that sort of thing, you can tell he's a good man for the job. We'll just say that. Mm-hmm. But that's awesome. You're coming in for the game. That'll be fun for a lot of you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of parallels too between the great WVU teams of the past, the Mountaineers teams of the past, certainly the '84 team and this year's team. If you look at having a mobile quarterback, experienced mobile quarterback, you've got a stable of running backs, not just one or two. You got a bunch of them. You've got good wide receivers. You got, it's tough nose defense. And a lot of character guys. If you hear the coaches talk during their weekly pressers, they'll talk about the fact that character does matter, and you got to want to be here. You got to want to work hard, and you have to dedicate yourself into getting better and also contributing to the development of other players. It's a team. The thing that we've talked about, Kevin, is that I know the late Dale Wolfley talked about this all the time. We didn't see the Coach Brown we see today seems to be an evolved version of the Brown that came in several years ago. He's really learned. I think he's learned his way into being a major college coach, and now you watch his press conferences and they're like clinics. And I watched it again today, his opening presser, and it was polished, substantive, informative, spot on. And you look at that, you look at the lineup, and in the weeks to come, we're going to go over the depth chart. It's really impressive what he's done.
No, and again, I think this is a really tough environment for coaches now. I think it's changed. The pressures on them that they face are so different even. And it was a pressure cooker back in my day, but now with the NIL, with the transfer portal, it's just very, very difficult.
Yeah, your situation stands out, and in today's environment, your situation probably wouldn't happen, you know,
Right.
because somebody somewhere would be offering some money or some incentive to go somewhere else. You know, you wouldn't be willing to set, you know, for three years and wait your turn, so to speak. But yeah, your situation may not have occurred if it were today.
Well, I'm glad to see that my fellow Arizonan stuck it out. Nico, as backup quarterback, and I thought he might feel the temptation to move, but I was very proud of my fellow Arizona quarterback that he decided to stick it out with the Mountaineers for another year. I think that's impressive.
Yep, and I think, you know, most WVU fans, who can be a tough group, really appreciate him too, and they show their appreciation every time he steps on the field. Because it's just not something that happens anymore, and you just don't have that loyalty and you know, the wanting to be there type of thing that occurs anymore. And he's never indicated a problem with it whatsoever. And I think hats off to him for that, because he's talented. I mean, he can play. He can definitely.
Oh yeah,
he can definitely play. You know.
Definitely.
So yeah, hats off to him for that. Frank, anything else?
I was going to say he came into that Pitt game last year.
Yeah.
When Garrett went down, and boy, he willed that team to a victory, and just incredible. And you know, again, more parallels as I'm thinking is the special teams this year. When you think of our kicker and punter, same as in '84. You just keep on going down the line. The one thing I wanted to do, we put together so people can see your stats. Again, coming in after having been the backup for the first couple of years, 18 games in 81 to 83, 54 for 101 for 730 yards. But then at 84, playing in all 12 games for almost 1,800 yards, 9 TDs. And what's interesting, again, you know, they always say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And you did that. You played, you had some of your best games. You had your best games, not some. Your best games came against BC and Penn State, and also in the bowl game. You kept the best for last. 280 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns against TCU in the Bluebonnet Bowl. And this is something that actually, in going through the data, we found, and we can't find any other team in the history of West Virginia that had beaten Pitt, Penn State, Syracuse, and Boston College all in the same year, other than the 1988 team, which repeated it. But you were the first. I think in 53, WVU, or 55, I can't remember the year, beat 3 of those teams, but not all 4. But you were the first to do that, which is a hell of an accomplishment. And it also just reminds us how much we miss Eastern football.
Yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes people may underestimate that as well, because you know, they look at Boston College and Syracuse today. You know, they're not the same as they were back then. And you know, when the Big East broke up, that really hurt them, and their programs have fallen off a little bit. So people underestimate that accomplishment, which is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
You know, the crazy thing is, I never thought I'd say this. On October 26th, this fall, I will be going to watch West Virginia University play the University of Arizona in a league game.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we talk about a different environment now. I mean, playing a league game clear across the country.
Yep.
So, but I'm looking forward to that too.
Yep. There's the schedule. I don't think any of us ever thought we'd see a schedule that looked like this.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. And the other thing about this schedule, and we've talked about this, Kevin, is that opener against Penn State. Penn State hardly ever opens on the road against a Power 5 team unless it's mandated by the Big Ten that they open up against another Big Ten team. And West Virginia, very, very rarely, in fact, we've got it somewhere here. Let me see if I can find it. Where when you look at West Virginia's schedule, let me see. Here we go. We put this together a couple weeks ago, never had a chance to use it. But those are all the openers of West Virginia openers since 2000. And you can see the ones in bold are the only time that West Virginia has opened home or away against a major college team.
Hmm.
Power 5 or now Power 4, but Power 5 team, Boston College, Wisconsin, and then Missouri and Kansas. And then Kansas again is a league game in 2022. So when you think about the game you're coming to, it's an extraordinary game. And as we've talked about in the past, about the only other equivalent would be the 1998 game when Ohio State, number one in the country, came into Morgantown. So that's going to be an extraordinary night.
Right. Well, I don't know what the NCAA's plan is for the future, but they've got to preserve these regional rivalries. They've just got to do that. It's been part of the magic of college football, and you don't want to kill the golden goose.
Heard a discussion on the radio the other day, and again, Frank and I had talked about this previously, but the discussion was that they felt that it was coming to a point where it was going to be regionalized and divisions, much like the NFL, with the new NCAA lawsuits and that sort of stuff coming down, that they were going to have to figure out how to get these regional games on and how to produce that revenue while keeping everything equal. And their thoughts were that the NFL model was probably going to be what they're going to use. And like Frank and I talked about, I thought that all along, and I feel like that's a good idea because again, it does give you those regional games, and they're very competitive. I mean, when you break up the country and you look at different regions of the country, you can split it up into divisions and have very good divisions. And I think it would be a real successful model to use. So I'm hoping that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing against the Big 12, but at the same time, for fans' perspective and history, like we like to look at, it just doesn't fit. It's just not right. So hopefully it'll occur.
Well, Kevin, see how you think about this is that obviously everything's being driven by money, and now the NCAA is negotiating they're consolidating the lawsuits against them, and it looks like there's going to be big time revenue sharing with the athletes, not just the current ones but the past ones.
Yeah.
In fact, if you have a few minutes, Greg and I were going to talk about this, and you being an attorney and a judge, it would be great to get your perspective on this. And the reason we bring it up is, travel costs going all over the country. When you think of USC and the Big Ten now, I'm just wondering whether the travel costs, you got to find somewhere to save monies. That may drive more interest in regional play again, just to keep the travel costs down.
Well, and the impact that travel cost has on performance.
Yeah.
It's different to travel 3 hours to play a game than it is to travel 6 hours, and it's just different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's a no-brainer. I understand that this is a tumultuous time with lots of upheaval, but it just seems to be a no-brainer that this has got to be a regionalized scheme with teams playing each other that are close by that are either already have natural rivalries or will quickly develop them because they're close by.
Yeah. Well, let me put this up so you can see it. I don't think we as fans have digested what this is going to mean, and it looks like. Let me do this. So you can see it. Let me get Kelly's comment out of there, and then what I'll do is put this up here. This is huge, and I'm not sure I'd want to be an athletic director because just to go through this, second line, football and basketball players, men from power schools, are now going to be eligible to receive an average $135,000 a year, and women in power basketball, 35, and the highest individual estimated payout for one athlete, this is all from ESPN, by the way, at the bottom there, will be $1.8 million. And schools, it looks like schools are going to be able to pay athletes directly via nil deals. Up to this point, only the collectives could do that. And this is the real key part, Greg and Kevin, with each power school providing up to 22% of the average revenues from media rights, ticket sales, sponsorship. So between roughly for most schools, between $20 and $22 million a year, rather than that being available to the schools to spend on athletics, that will go to the athletes. And that number will increase over time and is estimated to be up to $33 million by 2032. And so this last line to me is stunning. Many power schools will share nearly 50% of their total revenues in the future with athletes, but that doesn't mean it's going to be spread equally across sports. And athletes can still earn money from outside sources through nil, and there are no limits on scholarship. That's a mouthful, but it looks like, because the NCAA didn't get involved early on this, they're now backpedaling with multiple lawsuits, including the House suit that I think came out of a former Stanford player. What are your guys' thoughts about that?
Boy, I'm behind the curve on this, I have to confess, and it's an extraordinarily complex issue. But I'll just say broadly that I know there's much frustration in the fan base with NIL, and what I've taken to telling people is the only thing worse than NIL is not having.
That's right.
It's just not acceptable to have kids being the source of tremendous revenue generation by universities. And I could point out several of the folks we saw in those highlights who, based on their talent, drew fans in, had strong followings that benefited the university. And yes, they got a scholarship, but they didn't get their value. They did not get their value, and that's not right. This is extraordinarily complex. I also believe that it's going to take time to find an equilibrium, and so people need to be patient and let this work its way out. But it needs to happen in some form. Whether this is the right direction, I'm in no position to say with any authority.
Well, two things for me. First, I'd like to nominate Kevin for the special master position to adjudicate all these questions that are going to come, and it's going to be something that's needed, and that's going to be a real, that's going to be a touchy process. I feel sure. I mean, there's going to be a lot of litigation to go along with all this. One thing though that strikes me, and I read this, and I know, and I may be off base here, but you see, the big thing that Power 5 schools may be giving up 50% of their revenue, for this. And I can't help but think of the NCAA in my mind sitting there on a big pile of cash for all these years. I don't really have a lot of empathy, because that money is always being generated, and the NCAA has always taken a chunk of it, a big chunk of it. And so I think as this unfolds, hopefully, that part of the money, a lot of it will go back into helping these schools, with the funding and that sort of thing. So, it's going to be, we're nowhere near solutions to all the problems that this is going to create and have to be litigated.
And I was going to say, the courts are going to be involved.
Yeah. Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think, for the fan, it's frustrating. And I know for West Virginia fans in particular, we think about the rich getting richer. And then we fight to hang on to what we got and to try to, every 3 or 4 years come up with a good team and that sort of thing. But I think in the end, the way this is unfolding, I still think, your rich are going to be in a little better position, but I think it's going to help in a lot of ways. And I'm like you, Kevin, I agree. There is no reason why these kids aren't getting some of this revenue. They deserve it. And I mean, you know the work that goes into it, and the physical toll it takes on you, sometimes the mental toll for people, and they're making tons of money off of this, and these guys are out here trying to, dodge a violation by getting a Happy Meal at McDonald's, because the NCAA wants to smack them down for that, So I agree with you 100% on this, but I think we're a long way from it being first of all being so. Frank and I can understand it, and then being so the average fan can figure out what's going on and how it's all going to work.
It's a tough issue.
Yes, it is.
I will tell you, I was cleaning. Now that I'm retired, I was cleaning out my garage and got into one of the boxes with all the clothes. I found a picture with me on it. And I was thinking, I want my NIL.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, probably when you saw that 2016, you're like, dang.
I suspect it didn't sell much, maybe $200 or $300 is all I get. But I just want to say I earned some NIL.
There you go.
Well, the college Syracuse game on there and showed a little highlight or two. That doesn't stop quite a bit.
Kevin, you made the point of, it's just not right. And I think a number of us feel, I know Greg and I feel that way, that I remember giving a presentation about 10 years ago to a group of businessmen, and they wanted me to talk about the future of college sports. And I asked the question, and they were all business people. And I said, how many of you would like to run a business and only pay your employees fringe benefits?
Yeah.
And everybody raised their hand. And I said, but that's what's happening right now. And, at that time I was at Michigan State. That's what's happening right down in East Lansing. I mean, essentially all the money that these workers are generating, that they get their scholarships and room and board, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a lead-in for saying that when this first came up, because my God, I think Greg and I talked about it about a month ago, when this House suit had been filed out of California, I think it was, and schools were ruminating over whether or not they were into this revenue sharing. And God bless West Virginia. West Virginia University institutionally was one of only about 15 schools around the country, maybe fewer, that said, we're in. We want to share revenue with our athletes. And obviously the Big 12 didn't make them do it because relatively few of the Big 12, I don't know if there were any other Big 12 teams on that list. But you're right, it's going to take some time, but it's at least in the right direction.
I think an interesting thing to do too, I know they won't do this, but just out of curiosity or to show people, you hear this all the time. Well, they get scholarship, they get a free education, they get meals, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you take, 100 football players and you look at their scholarships, you add them all up. Same with your girls basketball, your men's basketball, et cetera, and see how much money's there. But I think if they would, like the Penn State West Virginia game coming up here at the end of August, if the NCAA would show how much revenue was generated from that game alone, I think people would change their minds a little bit because, I mean, it's not a couple 100,000, it's millions and millions of dollars, and I think that would help people understand a little bit better why this is so important.
Yeah, no, this complaining about the kids being greedy, that's ironic. That is deeply ironic.
Yes.
Because that money's been coming in for a long time, and I know athletics are a part of the university experience, but folks who wouldn't have the investment that we see in athletics if it wasn't profitable.
Yeah.
Advantageous for universities, and kids need to be able to take advantage of that too.
Yeah, and also you look at the amount of money the coaches are making, and if they knock on them, I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
But if you're a player, you're standing beside Nick Saban, and you're thinking, man, look at that Rolex he's wearing. He's making $7 or $8 million a year, and look at me with my timeouts. I mean, it's got to have an impact on you.
Sure. No. And I mean, how many kids are tremendous stars in college, but for whatever reason, talent, injuries, they just don't have quite the right skill set. They are not going to make it in the NFL, but they are extraordinarily popular, and they can't use what should be marketable for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Or haven't been able to.
Yeah. I think we all understand the politics of just about anything. And, the conferences, the major conferences have a lot of power, and it's not easy for a lot of times for the NCAA to have an idea or a concept as a president, let's say, and then just go ahead and do it. You know, it's you got to get it through the board. The conferences have to approve it. But that said, the reality is, and Greg and I talked about this months ago, there are 3 pathways to change in almost anything. You're gonna do it internally. We have an idea, and you start a change process, and something important happens, or there's a lawsuit, and so the courts settle it. Or the third option is there's going to be regulation, and the NCAA decided not to do it internally. Maybe it's because they couldn't. The major conferences were competing with each other, but they didn't do it. And they let the court actions went forward. And then the response was, and that's why they hired the former governor of Massachusetts as the new executive director, or whatever it's called at the NCAA. He started lobbying Washington, hoping that Congress would regulate college sports. And a whole bunch of Congress people came up with, including our own Joe Manchin in West Virginia. And a lot of the ideas were very good, but the challenge, obviously, is that we've got a lot of problems in this country. Any country has a lot of problems. And how much time are you going to spend on athletics? And so it didn't happen. So it was that second pathway, the lawsuit pathway, that has been driving this. And probably will continue. And now the NCAA has to backpedal. They're settling.
Yeah.
They have to settle.
Yep. Trying to get the horse back in the barn after it's too late. But they've always been reactive instead of proactive. And that comes out to in my mind. It's based on greed, you know, they just wanted it all. And for years and years and years, they got it all. And now it's coming back to bite them a little bit. So I have no sympathy for them, and these players. I'm happy for them. I hope they get everything they deserve. And same with the coaches. I mean, I coached for 30 years, and I made $2,500 a year from my coaching, and I've sucked that away at my retirement. That's why I'm still working. So I have no problem with the coaches making it too, because it's a tough job, and like you said, an atmosphere that's tough to survive in, and so I have no problem with those guys either. So. Hopefully it could get worked out to where the average fan still feels like we have a chance. I think that's all everybody wants, is we want a fair shot at it, so hopefully that's the way it'll be.
So I think on Timothy's question, Greg, you would say yes. You think it'll help?
I think ultimately it's going to. I don't know if we'll see that immediately, but I think in the end game, I think it's going to make it a more level playing field for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because, this money's been flying around into these universities for a long time. It's not a new thing where these rich schools have all the good players. I don't know how that happened years ago, but that's what happens. So it's not a new thing. So I think if you get some regulation on it, some control over it, and you can watch it and make sure you keep track of how it's all working, I think that makes it fairer for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think ultimately it will help.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I may not be here when it happens, but it may happen. Always hope. Anyway, Kevin, I tell you what, this has been an absolute pleasure for both. I speak on Frank's behalf, for him and me. It's been a real joy to talk to you, and just to get to meet you again. I was a huge fan back in the day. I'm sure I would have been a fan of sitting in the courtroom too. But you were a great Mountaineer, and we surely appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's nice to meet you all. I hope to maybe bump into you when I'm out for the Penn State game, or jump on a plane and come out to that Arizona West Virginia football game on October 26th. Come to my tailgate. I'm recruiting West Virginia folks to stand up.
Frank.
The horde of University of Arizona Wildcat fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, Frank. You can start getting that organized.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot, but I will. Given the fact that WVU is playing at Arizona, could we entice you to come back before the game or after the game, the show before the game or the show after the game, to talk about it? Would you be willing?
Frank, I'm retired, so this is big stuff for me. I'm in the garage and fixing stuff outside.
You have to wonder how you ever got anything done while you're working. Now you're trying to get all the honeydews done.
It was easier to work.
Yeah.
Seemed like you had a lot more free time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we really do appreciate you. We look forward to having you back on, and we'll hook up with you and get that scheduled for either before or after the Arizona game. We'll look forward to that.
All right. Go Mountaineers.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. That's Kevin White, everybody.
Thank you.
In my mind, Frank, one of the most underrated quarterbacks that WVU's ever had. And again, I still feel like it's because he was squeezed in between two NFL players, Oliver Luck and Jeff Hostetler. And but he was a great quarterback. He just had such a command of their offense. You watch him perform, he just steady. I mean, just steady and so much fun to watch.
Well, we got feedback through. It was Mike Dunlap actually who had talked with Coach Nealon, and Mike shared it with us. And as you know, and one of the things that he said that Coach Nealon said was, the guy's really smart, and he could manage games, and he didn't get flustered. I mean, he's got a job to do. And, it's interesting because when you think about what it takes to be a trial attorney of any kind, or a judge, you can't get flustered. You have to be systematic, deliberate, focus on the task at hand, and get it done. And Kevin said as much. And so I thought that was great feedback.
Yep.
It's interesting because we as fans admire these players and respect them, especially when we get to know them and see the full person. But one of the things that's been so great for me with the book and working with you and then doing the show is you see that admiration between the players, among the players, and the coaches toward the players.
Yep.
And this concept of the band of brothers is pretty spot on when it comes to athletes. And boy, I hope we can get Pat Randolph on.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Well, you watch that guy run.
Oh gosh, he was something else. He was something else. And again, you talk about the band of brothers. That shows that. I mean, we've had several comments from former players that played with Kevin White and spoke about him and that sort of thing. It just shows you that they're still out there. They still remember and they still care. And it's always fun. And that was a surprise to see Pat Randolph chime in. That was awesome. And we'll look forward to having
just great.
Hopefully
and
at some point we get Coach Nealon and he can talk about these guys a little bit too.
Oh my God, that would be great.
Yep.
Gonna say for next week, let me get that up here.
Yep.
We're gonna have another player who's not as well known back in the 70s, 73 to 76, but was a great defensive tackle. Chuck Smith, who is very well known. I'm not sure where Chuck is living these days, from Pennsylvania when he came to WVU. I don't know if he's living in West Virginia or back in Pennsylvania, but we'll see. Chuck has agreed to be on next week. And then our good friend Mark Parsons, who recommended Chuck and who helps us line up guests, will be co-host next week. And possibly Mickey too. Mickey may be back sooner. We thought he might not be back until the beginning of the season, but we'll see how that's going to shake out.
Yep. It'll be fun talking to Chuck Smith. Look forward to that. Like we've got such a good guest lineup. You just look forward to it every week. Can't wait for Wednesday to get here. I know I'm always excited, and I was excited about this one. And all of them, we've been great. And talking to these guys is it's just so fun to hear their perspective and the memories that they have of things that happened. Coach Paterno smacking him on the back and saying,
that's great.
Enough, we're cashing it in, that's pretty stuff right there. You like to hear that. So a lot of fun. I
was going to say, as Kevin was talking about Coach Nealon, Chuck was there at the end of the Bobby Bowden regime at West Virginia. I'm sure he'll have plenty of stories to talk about in terms of the great coach that he played under.
Yep. And, again, you kind of look at the coaches in the same perspective. You look at Kevin White, Frank Cignetti was kind of squeezed in there between a couple of really good ones, and he did have some struggles at WVU, but he went on to have a fantastic coaching career after he left WVU. And again, another one that I know I think made the Hall of Fame, I believe.
He did
get the accolades from WVU's end that he probably deserves, even though he had some struggles there. Had some pretty good teams and some really good players. So it'll be fun to hear about that as well. All right, Frank, I think that's going to do it for another Wednesday night. Flies by. we always worry if we got enough content, and before you know it, we're an hour and 10 minutes
No,
in. So it flies by, don't it?
It does. Always a pleasure, Greg.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
All right. Same with you, Frank. Bid you good night along with everybody who watched. We appreciate you tuning in. We look forward to coming to you again next week for another great episode of the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Christ. That is Frank Fear. We look forward to seeing you next week. Good night, everybody.